Hello, hi, good morning. Week 3, Sunday Bloody Sunday here on the ESPN College Football YouTube channel. I am Matt Barrie. It is where we sit, talk football, relive, commiserate, celebrate on another Sunday Bloody Sunday. Cheers. As you know, I always do. I start off with something tied to me, and that is this week. Cheers to the 3-0 Arizona State Sun Devils, who went into San Marcos in a hostile environment on Thursday Night Football, called by me and yours truly, Dan. Well, to be Dan Mullen and yours truly, Thursday night ESPN, and it was a great atmosphere. They could have easily gone in there and lost. In fact, Texas State jumped out to a 21-7 lead at one point. Arizona State came all the way back. They won 31-28. Incredible atmosphere. Incredible for me to call a game for my alma mater. It was candidly difficult to stay unbiased for about 4 hours, but I think we did it. And also, one of the most amateur hour things I've ever seen by the officials. With 2 seconds left, they were trying to convince us that Sam Levitt, the quarterback, didn't take 2 seconds to take the final knee. Players were already done. They had already shaken hands. They were taking their pads off in the field. The game was over, and then the officials put 1 second back on the clock for Texas State. Again, sometimes college officials just need to get out of the way. They didn't, and thankfully it didn't change the outcome, but still a great game. So as we always do, cheers to something that's good for you. Arizona State being 3-0, already matched their win total from a year ago of 3, after being picked dead last in the Big 12. That just makes me feel good. When they win on a Thursday and it's here on Sunday Bloody Sunday, and I've had time to just be able to think about it and enjoy it, makes the weekend less stressful. So that's how we'll start Sunday Bloody Sunday, as we do each and every week, with something that, I want to talk about related to me. Interesting week 3. Some of the head storylines: LSU early on surviving at South Carolina. There were a lot of things in that game. 2 pick sixes called back for penalties. I think if you're Shane Beamer and you're waking up this morning, you're thinking about those, because it was 17-0. I mean, if you get one of those pick sixes to hold, you're winning handily. And Brian Kelly's answering a lot of questions this morning at 1-2, but they don't. Garrett Nussmeier and that team finds a way to come back and win. I didn't think LSU would have this many problems early in the season, but they do. The offensive line was shockingly getting pushed around by South Carolina's good defensive front. But it showed no quit. I mean, you're down 17-0 on the road, noon kickoff. They're all lathered up in Columbia, and you come back and win. To me, that game had an opportunity to really screw things up throughout the day, but LSU comes back and wins. So cheers to the Bayou Bengals if you're an LSU fan, for surviving that one, and cheers to my friends in Columbia. It can't be easy waking up today knowing you had that game in hand. So that was a fun way to kind of get things started. And the slate, let's be honest, the slate wasn't great. Alabama, Wisconsin was the big noon kickoff. I'm interested to see where Luke Fickell goes in year 2. I believe this is year 2. Why does it seem like he's been there longer? But it's year 2 for him. And I'm kind of interested to see where this thing goes. He was a program turnaround builder at Cincinnati. And right now, Wisconsin's just punchless. They don't have an offense. They brought in Phil Longo, who was the offensive coordinator at North Carolina when Sam Howell, Drake May, and the like were there. Tyler Van Dyke gets hurt early. They're just punchless offensively. In Alabama, and I'm telling you, they're doing just enough to win big, and Jalen Milroe is a touchdown machine. I'm telling you, we saw him do it with Michael Penix Jr. Jalen Milroe, write it down, put this on the YouTube channel forever. He will be in New York City for the Heisman Trophy ceremony, and we are just the tip of the iceberg of what statistically and what he'll look like this season. There are such things as perfect marriages between coach and quarterback. You've heard Jalen Milroe talk about it all offseason, how he and DeBoer have forged this great relationship. It looks good so far. They've got a big game coming up in a couple of weeks. I cannot wait to see what this looks like in a couple of weeks, because I believe that this Milroe-DeBoer thing is going to take off. And everybody's talking about Georgia, which we'll get to in a second, and rightfully so. They're the number 1 team in the country. Everyone's talking about the offense at Tennessee and Ole Miss, and they should, because they look really, really good. But the first time the country is going to really be able to see what Milroe is all about, Saturday, September 28th against Georgia. They got the bye week. This one's going to be special because I marvel at Milroe's athletic ability, and Kalen DeBoer's got a player like he's never had before. So keep an eye on Milroe in Alabama, and cheers to the Crimson Tide and getting the win on the road. And what was billed as a big game, but it was as big as it was till kickoff. Wisconsin got out to a 3-0 lead. They never looked back. Speaking of quarterbacks, here's the one thing I just don't understand. Florida State shockingly 0-3 on the season. They lose to Georgia Tech week 0. They come back and lose to Boston College. And then, yes, Jay, you're thinking, oh, Memphis, group of 5 team, feel-good story. Can they get that win? Memphis went in there in one start to finish. Florida State was never even in the zip code of thinking they were going to compete in that game. And I don't understand. They're in the portal, in the transfer portal. You can evaluate these players. And Florida State goes from Jordan Travis, and they pick up DJ Uiagalelei. We saw him at Clemson. He had the one game against Notre Dame when he came in for Trevor Lawrence. After that, not good. Transfers to Oregon State. I think he was better at Oregon State, but he was still DJU. What I can't figure out is what Florida State saw in him to develop this year's team around him to bring him back to the ACC. It's as bad as I've ever seen. That offense is absolutely brutal. It is listless. It can't move the football. And it's not like there wasn't tape on DJU before you brought him to Tallahassee. And look, you find it, read about it wherever you want. The high school recruiting at Florida State has not been great. And so when you build a team around the portal and the portal guys don't hit, you're in for a world of hurt. Now, in no way is Norvell on the hot seat. I don't believe so. I mean, it's college football, so anything is possible. But to sit here and develop this thing around DJU is probably the first big mistake Norvell's made that's going to start conversations he doesn't want to start. And so, there was a poll on our YouTube channel about who should start next week, DJU or Brock Glenn. I don't think it's close. I think you turn the page from DJU now, try to salvage somewhat of a season if you're Florida State, some optimism, because if you're watching them, you're not watching offense. You're watching a pretty good defense and an offense that legitimately is awful. Brock Glenn's got to be the guy going forward. I just cannot believe this is where we are with Florida State after their undefeated season. But on the positive side of that, cheers to Memphis. For those of you that saw my bracket that I had when I was hosting Get Up this summer, I had Memphis in the playoff as the group of 5 representative. Right now, that looks pretty good. This was one of those games that was right in their way to having a season that could lead them to the college football playoff. They get the win. The American's tough. Tulane's going to be a tough out for them. In fact, we're calling that game Thursday night, Thanksgiving night, ESPN. But Memphis's schedule, if you look at it, the way it lays out, they've got at Navy September 21st, Middle Tennessee State, South Florida, North Texas, Charlotte. The first game they have left, if you're really looking at it, UTSA maybe in November, Tulane, I just mentioned that one. That was a huge win for Memphis. So cheers to my friends at Memphis. Big win. Congratulations. Keep the momentum going after sending Florida State to an unbelievable 0-3 record. One of the biggest stories you'll hear this morning in college football and around the country, the injury to Quinn Ewers, abdomen injury, and Texas's beatdown of UTSA. Cheers to Arch Manning for looking like an athletic Manning. Gene to be able to run, obviously skipped Eli and Peyton. But look, if you're Texas, you're feeling pretty good about yourselves this morning. I know Quinn Ewers being injured isn't ideal, but is there any team in the country that's got a better backup quarterback situation than the Texas Longhorns? Everybody else gets the star quarterback and they beg the youngster to stay before hitting the portal. Sark has done that. Arch isn't going anywhere. He's the quarterback of the future. And they have this kid playing at a high level. He accounted for 5 touchdowns yesterday. And if you look at the way the schedule plays out, For Texas, they have Monroe, then they have Mississippi State, and then they have a bye week. And then they have Oklahoma and Georgia. They are in a perfect spot to develop Arch, let him start to finish against Monroe, see where Quinn Ewers is going into Mississippi State, although Mississippi State lost to Toledo last night. Cheers to Toledo and Maction, by the way. Tangent. NIU beating Notre Dame week before. Toledo beating Mississippi State yesterday. That's incredible. But Texas, you're in a good spot. You've got the best backup quarterback in the country. Let Quinn Ewers get healthy before the meat of the schedule. We saw it last year with the Longhorns. Malik Murphy had to come in and start for an injured Quinn Ewers. They get the win. They move on to the college football playoff. Arch is the guy. Let him develop. Know that you've got him in case something happens with Ewers. And there are people that's like, oh, quarterback competition. He and Ewers. It's not a quarterback competition. This is Quinn Ewers' team. Arch Manning is a great story. People love watching Arch Manning play. They cheer for him when they come in. That is all well and good, and you love to see it. However, it's Quinn Ewers' team. Let him get healthy for the meat of the schedule in a team that looks like it's headed back to the college football playoff. And let's just enjoy Arch Mania. I mean, the kid's really good. He can run. He can throw. He's worth the hype. It's not his team yet. It's going to be his team in the future. But to be able to watch him come out there, lead his team to a victory against an inferior opponent, and look confident doing it, 5 touchdowns. Future is bright for Arch Manning. So cheers to the Manning family for having like a dual threat quarterback in the family. Eli and Peyton just kind of sit there and watch, throw. Arch can run. Good for him. The last thing I want to get to here on Sunday, Bloody Sunday, is the Billy Napier situation at Florida. We talk about it extensively on the Matt Barrie show with Paul Feinbaum in our weekly recap. Things are not good in Gainesville, and that's putting it mildly. I don't know if Billy will last the season. In fact, he could be done by the time that we record this. The Chris Lowe report that the boosters have raised enough money to pay his buyout. I believe it's around $27 million. It's just, this is the state of college football. And I'll get hell for this, and people will say it's because he's my colleague, and people will say it's because I'm too close to the situation with the former coach. But this is what happens when you rush to judgment and fire another coach. This is not an indictment on Billy Napier. This is an indictment on the Florida administration and Scott Strickland for firing Dan Mullen. You should have never, ever, ever fired Mullen. Was it going south in one season? Yeah. Was he too loyal to a defensive coordinator in Todd Grantham? Absolutely. He'll tell you that. He admits that. But to go to 3 consecutive New Year's Six games and win them in the first 3 years, and then on the 4th, fire him because it wasn't going right in one season, is where Strickland's going to pay for it with his job. You just don't do that. Again, Billy Napier was a great up-and-coming coach at Louisiana. Was he ready to go from there to the gauntlet of Florida? Obviously not. Mullen was a time-tested coach that built Mississippi State, which, by the way, look at Mississippi State now, and went to Florida. And Mullen's lowest-ranked recruiting class is still better than Napier's highest-ranked recruiting class. And this is my problem with college football in a nutshell. The overreaction to something that doesn't need to be overreacted to so quickly. If they'd have let and gone into Mullen's office and said, hey, bro, you need to get rid of Grantham. You need to get rid of the offensive line coach. We need to figure this thing out. You're probably not in this situation because at this point, NIL starts. There's money pumping into Florida. Mullen's already built the facilities. This has nothing to do with Mullen being a colleague and a friend of mine. I've learned more about the inside workings of Florida, but it's a prime example of why you just have to sit and let things take root. You think Florida right now would take a coach, again, 3 consecutive New Year's Six Bowls, playing for SEC championship, and then it goes south in the 4th season rather than what they're watching now? It is absurd that we've gotten to the point where the second things go poorly, you're out. Because what have we said in college football all the time? You had better know who you're getting, and that person had better be a better alternative than what you have. And in this case, it wasn't. And now Florida set themselves back again. Mario Cristobal, by the way, is sitting there like Pitbull in South Beach with a cigar in his hand, watching this all develop. because it is an absolute tire fire at Florida, and they're going to have to do something to figure it out because it's bad. Napier's probably not going to make it. And look, again, I think he's a good up-and-coming coach, but he's just in over his skis at Florida, and it's showing. That's my soapbox for today. It's just ridiculous how much we just overreact to situations that don't need overreacting to. So much to get into. Week 3. Again, we've got the recap over with Paul Feinbaum on the Matt Barrie show. But again, a Sunday, bloody Sunday, plenty of cheers. By the way, cheers to everyone that won their rivalry games early on in the season. Washington State, you get the biggest cheers of all. Why? You were left for dead by your rival to get rid of the Pac-12, and Washington moves on to the Big Ten for the riches and the fame and the regionally located conference that makes zero sense. You beat them in the Apple Cup yesterday, and I love that story because no one gave you a chance, and you did it. So cheers to Washington State. Cheers to week 3 of the college football season. Come join us every week for a cocktail and some therapy of college football on Sunday, Bloody Sunday. We'll see you next week. By the way, Oklahoma, Tennessee is going to be fun. We'll be here recapping all of it with you on the ESPN College Football YouTube channel. Enjoy the rest of your week, and come on. Cheers to yourself for stopping by.